In this lesson, we will set up our base project that we will be using throughout the course. So as we work through the course, we're going to be learning how to use different configuration types and how to configure Spring Data for different data stores. When we encounter one of these new configuration types or a configuration for a different data store, we're going to revert back and use this project as our base. To get started, we're going to go to File on the menu and click on New, and then we're going to go down and click Maven Project. Check the first checkbox which says Create a Simple Project, and then click Next. Now we must enter a group ID for our Maven project, and that's going to be tom.o'reilly.sdata. And now we must specify an artifact ID. And the artifact ID that we're going to use is spring-data-course. We'll also use this as the name of our Maven project, and we will not provide a description because it's not necessary. With that in place, simply click on Finish, and our new Maven project will be built. So if you're familiar with Maven, you know that a Maven project contains a pom.xml file, and that can be found by expanding the course within the Package Explorer, and then scrolling down to the pom.xml file. And when we open that file, you're going to see a user interface provided within STS that allows us to work with our POM. The POM provides a list of the artifacts that our project is dependent upon, and they're referred to as dependencies. So if we click on the Dependencies tab, we are able to specify the artifacts that we need to build out a Spring Data project. Now, there are multiple modules within Spring Data, and some of them have different major and minor version numbers. To help us out with this, the folks at Spring have created a BOM or a bill of materials, and it helps facilitate aligning the different versions when we work with Spring Data. In order to add a bill of materials, we simply navigate to the Add button within the Dependency Management section, and we put in spring-data-release train. And here you'll see that we get this artifact. And if we expand it, we see all of the different releases for Spring Data. Now you'll notice some have numbered versions with major and minor versions, and then others have names. And if you recognize these names, it's kind of cool what they did. These are the names of some famous developers. So currently they are on the Gosling release train. And so if you're familiar with James Gosling, he is one of the founders of Java. And we put that POM in place, and that's going to specify the versions that we need for our different dependencies, and then we don't have to sort that out. Now, one thing you'll need to do is you'll need to click on that artifact and then hit Properties and change your scope to Import, and then simply hit OK. So at this point, we have added our bill of materials, so we can proceed with adding our Spring Data dependencies. And the dependency we want to work with is the Spring Data-JPA dependency. This first section of the course will deal strictly with JPA. And if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, we will see the org.springframework.data group ID. And we want to use the official Spring libraries, so we want to stay within that group ID. And you'll see that it initially puts the version, but you can just remove that version and then hit OK. And once we do that, we can save our pom.xml file, and you see that the version is specified for you and it indicates that it is managed, and that came from the bill of materials. The next thing we need to do is to provide our JPA implementation. So we're going to add the Hibernate Entity Manager, and we'll want to use the org.hibernate group ID, and that will give us the latest entity manager from Hibernate. So that's our JPA implementation. Next, we'll add our database. So just click on add and then just type in the group ID of com.h2 database and then select the h2 artifact. Next, we're going to add the dependencies for our logging framework. So we're going to use SLF4j on top of log4j. So we need to add several dependencies here. The first one that we'll add is the SLF4j API. And once again, we're going from the folks at SLF4j. So make sure you're within the org.slf4j group and then simply pick out the API and add it. Next, we need to add the SLF4j log4j 12 artifact, and we'll pull that from the org.slf4j group. And then finally, we will add log4j itself. So I'm just going to click on add and then log4j. And this one's always hard to find. But if you scroll down, you'll see the log4j artifact and we can add that in. And it always comes back as a bundle, so you need to change that to a jar file within the properties. So I just clicked on properties, went to type, and changed it to jar. At this point, we can save our pom.xml file, and we have the necessary libraries in place in order to work with a Spring Data JPA project. Now, as we work with different data sources in the course, we'll be changing this up a little bit, but as far as the configuration types, we won't need to modify that. So now let's take a look at our project, and you'll notice on the left side of our screen that we're using Java version 1.5. Not recommended at this point. Java 8's out, it has lambdas, all sorts of other goodies out there, streams. So we'd like to take advantage of those. So we're going to swap out our JRE version that Maven has specified for us. So just right click on that JRE system library and then click on properties. And here you can see that you can change your execution environment. So currently I'm using my 1.8 JRE, but I'm restricting myself to 1.5. So let's go to the Java SE-1.8 version, and now we will use a more up-to-date version of Java. You can also just click on the workspace default JRE if you have a favorite setup that you like to use, and that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. The last thing we'll do is add a log4j.properties file to our source main resources directory to configure log4j. So just use the new dialog and insert a new file and name it log4j.properties. And within your working files, you will find a log4j.properties file that will contain this configuration. So I've just copied it in place. We're not going to cover log4j and go over it in detail. But with that in place, it completes the configuration of our project, and we'll be referring to this project when we need to revert to our base project in the course.